Our local Toyota dealer service scam continues on. If you followed the video, and I'll share the link at the end, about 3 months ago, we took our car in for servicing at one of our local Toyota dealers. We've owned this vehicle now for about 3 years. It's a 2022, and we bought it brand new. We love it. It's the SE all-wheel drive, it has the extras in it, so it gives the push-button start, and we love it. With the all-wheel drive, it makes it great for winter, and it's been very reliable, relatively speaking, of course. We haven't had any major issues, and the only challenges that we've had have been around the service and the dealership network. The dealership would not answer our calls till finally my daughter, who drives this car, wrote a very aggressive note and finally got the attention of that dealership general manager. After the general manager got that note, they finally said, okay, whoa, let's make this right. Let's do this properly. We'll get the vehicle in for servicing. This time we'll make sure we have a journeyman mechanic look at your vehicle. We'll do the entire service. Again, free of charge, no worries. We just want to make it right. And now this latest story means I can no longer trust my dealership. So the continuation of this story doesn't just begin and end with them. It actually somewhat involves a local box store. You know, those big jumbo box stores you find all over the place that you need a special membership. Without mentioning any names, we bought a set of winter tires on a set of Steelies, steel wheels. So in that last video, you noticed that we had steel rims attached to the vehicle because they had winter tires, because it gets snow here on the road. We get gravel, snow, and ice. So you have to outfit vehicles these days here, at least in this climate where we get snow on the road, with the proper rubber. Otherwise, you find yourself slipping and sliding, and it's not all that safe. So we actually had our winter tires and steel wheels installed by that box store, a tire department, if you will. And in doing so, they basically slapped those 4 wheels on and called it a day. Through our summer tires, which these ones are the original summer wheels, these were put in the back seat, and we took those and put them in storage. But now that spring is here, we've got these wheels back on, and we put the steel wheels, which are the winter wheels, back in storage. But here we go. Obviously, we have mag locks, and we have a set of lug nuts all the way around. But these are the original factory lug nuts. That's part of the problem that I want to talk about today, why this continues this decline in my trust for the dealer network. When we're dealing with professionals, if you need a heart surgery, what are you going to go to? A vet? No, you're going to go to somebody who's specialized and trained in open heart surgery. If some reason you have a problem with your brain, you're going to go to somebody that specializes in the brain. If you want to get your car fixed, you're going to go to a mechanic that knows that vehicle. And even more specifically, better yet, if it's a dealer and a mechanic that works on that specific vehicle. Hence why we went to the dealership in the first place. And many of you I know had commented in the comment section below and said, look, why don't you just fix your own cars? Why don't you just maintain your own cars? And I agree. And that's where we're coming to. And that's what we're going to do from here on out. We're definitely going to start maintaining our car ourselves because we've entirely lost all faith. I've always said that if you've got a vehicle that's a little bit older, sure, go to that backyard shop. If you have a trustworthy mechanic, maybe do it a little DIY. From here on out, we're going to do a lot more DIY on this car, and I'm going to be sharing some of those ins and outs and some of the maintenance tactics as well. Toyota has a list, like every brand has their own list of specifications, a checklist, things to look for, standard conventional issues that they're going to be watching out for. And some of those, of course, we know Toyota, they had the sudden acceleration. Even these floor mats were part of that checklist to make sure that you didn't have anything in the way of that throttle, because that would allegedly, in some cases, cause the sudden acceleration. And that was a big problem, a recall many years ago. So that's looked after, and that's on the recall list. They did an AVR test on the battery. They do inspections on hoses, check for oil lines, make sure there's no leaks. They check for filters. They check as well your brakes. They check the brakes, both the lining on the discs themselves as well as the pads, and check, and they usually give you a readout, and that's supposed to be part of that service that you pay for. They actually numbers that they spit out for you. Well, this wasn't entirely accurate, and you're gonna have to see that video at the end there to get more information on why we had an issue with the brakes specifically, and why part of this whole trickle effect and we losing interest and trust in the dealership to begin with had to do with the brakes. But there's more to that story, because one thing I noticed, I was reviewing some of the checklists and they say check drive belts and adjust as necessary. Well, what's a drive belt? The only drive belt in these Toyotas are this. You have this drive belt right here. This is essentially running some of your alternator. It comes off the crank and runs a lot of your accessories. But there's a belt, there's a pulley there, there's a tensioner down there. And quite often they refer to that as a idler pulley or a tensioner. And that keeps a constant tension on the belt. So how can you adjust that if necessary? See, to me, that's a bit of a cop-out and another one of those silly little pieces that they put in as a CYA, but that's my own personal opinion. I think that's bung, and I think a lot of these inspection items are a little bit flaky. Now, yes, you want to check suspension components, that's good, brake wear, tire wear. Those are all real safety impacts if they're not in good shape. But there's a lot of things that are just noise, pencil whipping exercise in my own personal opinion, because some of that, of course, you're gonna look at hoses. I can look right under the hood here and analyze and see, make sure we got no leaks. There's no leaks anywhere. I look underneath here. You can do a check on the radiator, make sure there's no leaks through the radiator. You can kind of have a look around and take a look and do your own general analysis, and then basically pencil whip a 25 item list. And I'm certainly not suggesting that any dealers do that, because I know there's some really reputable dealers. There's a lot of great dealers that just want to do the right thing. And unfortunately, it's always the bad ones, the outliers, the bad apples that make it bad for everybody, and it gives those good ones the bad name. And I've had many associations and a lot of interactions with some great dealers, great mechanics that just want to do the right job and give you the service that you asked for. But I can't say we're totally confident with that, because along with this service came an oil change, okay? Now, the oil change, I have to say, this was something that I questioned at the time, but because I was so, disturbed by the fact that the brake wear issue and some of the other problems and the questions whether they were going to answer the phone or not, honestly, that's on me. I should have checked this. And a lot of you commented, I should have checked the oil right here. I should have checked whether they had changed the oil properly or not. Because when we got the vehicle back and we realized those numbers on the brakes didn't make sense, we just started responding and reacting. But the reality is, I looked around and there was something that kind of didn't sit right with me. Now, I didn't check the oil level. I didn't check the condition of it. And if they did an oil change, presumably by pulling the dipstick out, you can tell. Is it fresh oil? You can kind of tell by looking at it if it's clean oil or not. You can tell if there's fuel in it, if it's been spending a lot of time idling. It's pretty easy to tell clean oil from dirty oil. So I don't know, was the oil changed? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm not here to dispute that. But upon looking at the vehicle later, and on that last video, I did notice the filler cap. And when you do an oil change, usually it becomes quite clear. You get this dust right on here. You'll notice this dusty area on the filler cap. But usually, if you're playing with this, like I'm interacting with this and I'm touching this and I got greasy hands, usually just by turning that on there, it's going to become obvious that you were interacting. You're going to see greasy fingers. You're going to see the dust worn off on that cap. But I didn't see that. I saw the original dust that looks like it's been on there since day one, since, or at least for a year or two, I don't know. But it seemed as though that the oil, maybe I started to question whether the oil was actually changed. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't bother checking the dipstick, but I started to wonder about that too. Now, maybe it was changed, maybe it wasn't, but see, that's the problem. As soon as you find something, a flaw in the armor, then it starts making you doubt and question whether any of it was done and how well was it done. Because more to the story about taking your car to a professional, you expect the professionals to identify certain things. Maybe not look for everything, but some of the easy pickings. We know that the vehicle was supposed to get a tire rotation check. They sort of opted out of doing that, and they didn't mention anything further to that. And I can say, because even the service manager admitted that the numbers looked weird and obscure and they had no excuse for it, but this service manager at least did it right and got a journeyman mechanic to go through the vehicle again. What we didn't see on that original invoice, after that, all that pencil whipping and the scribbling on a napkin, eventually, after a period of time, it took quite some time, even after we got this car scheduled in a second time, after they promised to get a journeyman mechanic to look at it, even after that, we still didn't get a proper invoice until right at the very end for the first go around. So we finally got that invoice, we looked it over, and there's no other conversation other than the service was completed, blah, 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 and the usual story. But when we took it in the second time, the journeyman mechanic went through it, did all his checks and inspections, and that second mechanic who looked at the car identified that these lug nuts right here are built for alloys. These are for alloys, aluminum wheels. These are alloys right here. That's right. So these lug nuts are actually designed to hold a rim on tight, depending on whether you've got alloys or steel. But here's where the box store comes in, because these were the same lug nuts that they put on the steel wheels. You see, and now that becomes a bigger conversation of safety. Now that's where the box store comes in, where we had the steel wheels purchased, the tires and the rims and installed on the car. And yet, they didn't identify that those were the wrong lug nuts. The only way we figured that out was two ways. Number one, a lot of you amazing viewers out there, and I'm gonna say amazing. To be quite honest, I didn't really notice it at first glance myself, other than they looked kind of weird. It's true, a lot of you reached out and said in the comments that those are the wrong lug nuts. And then guess what? Lo and behold, after that, we had the car taken in. The second mechanic did his service on the vehicle, did the once over. So why wasn't it identified in the first place? But the second mechanic said, caution. Word of advice, you have lug nuts, the wrong ones, you need to get that swapped out. They need to be the right ones for the right wheels. Because we have these alloy lug nuts here on the steel rims, and he identified that as a serious safety concern. But that wasn't identified by the first mechanic, and it was also installed by the box store incorrectly. So at least thank goodness that this second mechanic was able to look in there and realize and identify that there was a safety concern. See, that's a huge issue. We take our vehicles to these professionals and we hope they're doing a proper job of it, and then they don't. That's almost like going under the knife, having a surgery, and them leaving tools and a rag inside after they suture you up. That's not a good scene, is it? So this is kind of where it's left us with a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth. We know vehicles, you have to maintain them, you have to look after them. And I've said this time and time again, a quality shop that you can trust is worth more than their weight in gold, because they're taking care of these investments. A lot of people say they're bad investments. Absolutely, cars are not the best investment by any means. However, they're not cheap. When you're spending $40,000 or $50,000 for a new Camry, or you're spending $90,000 for a new Toyota SUV, or you're spending, BMW, you're spending $140,000. I don't care what kind of car you're driving. They cost a lot of money, and we work long and hard hours to pay for these vehicles. And so we expect that they're going to be looked after with due care and attention. But I can't say that that's been entirely the case. And our overall response is one which you're going to have to see that other video I keep talking about. I'm going to link that at the end. But you're definitely going to have to see what's going on over there, how we got to this point, and what kind of led us down this path of identifying and questioning whether any of the service work was done in the first place. And now, I think it's time to start doing a little bit more DIY. Warranty's pretty much running out, and now it's just time to get the fingers dirty.